Okay, everyone, here we are. We have just 2 days left in the craziest campaign season most of us can remember, at least that I can remember. I mean, 4 indictments, 34 felony counts, 1 switch at the top of the Democratic ticket, and 2 assassination attempts later, we are now standing on the edge of what feels like a very tall cliff. And one of the truly remarkable things about this race is that with so much volatility, with dozens of moments that we all felt like maybe this is the determining factor right now, the race still looks remarkably close. The news cycle surprised us constantly throughout, but there were a few polling moves that really surprised us that much in terms of massive movement. That is until last night. And before I show you these numbers, and you may have seen them, but you should know where they come from. And they come from Ann Seltzer, the widely respected, incredibly accurate historically pollster at the Des Moines Register in Iowa. The phrase gold standard gets thrown around a lot in polling, but I can tell you, Ann Seltzer is actually the gold standard. I mean, Ann Seltzer just gets it right much more than she gets it wrong. That makes her the gold standard. In 2016, Seltzer was out on a limb predicting that Donald Trump would beat Hillary Clinton in Iowa by 7 points. Guess what? Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton by 9. In 2020, her final poll before the election had Trump up 7, and he ended up winning the state by 8. Well, in her final poll before this election, released just last night, Ann Seltzer's Des Moines Register poll sent a bit of a mini earthquake around last night across the political world because it showed Kamala Harris leading Donald Trump by 3 points in Iowa. And that lead is fueled by a massive 20-point advantage among women in that poll. Now, there are definitely outliers in polling. We all know that. That's probably one of the stories, could be one of the stories of this election. And this poll could be an outlier. I'm certainly not suggesting that Kamala Harris is about to run away with Iowa. The campaign isn't betting on that either. What I am saying is that Ann Seltzer is very good at this. And even if she is close to correct on this one, it is very good news for Kamala Harris, in part because it shows that she's doing quite well with a white rural electorate. And here's the thing. It's not a poll happening in a vacuum either. I mean, this one poll out of Iowa isn't the only thing the Harris campaign is feeling good about right now with 2 days left. Women are outpacing men in casting early ballots by 9 points nationwide, by 13 points right now in the crucial state of Pennsylvania. Democrats also have a 10-point enthusiasm advantage over Republicans, according to Gallup. And there are signs that late deciding voters are breaking for Harris, too. According to a New York Times poll just out this morning as well, among the 8% of voters who said they had only recently decided on their vote, Harris wins the group by double digits. That's called closing strong. And that's just a sample of the information out there. And look, if you are feeling overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information, analysis, stories, data points, hot takes, whatever it may be, that may or may not tell you what the result will actually be, I've been doing this a very long time, and I feel the exact same way. The truth is we just don't know what the outcome of the election is going to be on Tuesday. And I'm going to talk to Pete Buttigieg and Nancy Pelosi today, 2 of the smartest minds in the Democratic Party. And guess what? They don't know what's going to happen, the outcome's going to be either. But right now, for everything we don't know yet, there is a lot we do know about the choice and the stakes of this election. And for me, as crazy and disorienting as this campaign season has been, I hope that these final few days have provided the country with a level of clarity. I mean, this week, Trump said he'll protect women, quote, whether they like it or not. Whether they like it or not. Now, here is how I heard that. As a creepy, condescending threat from a guy who was himself found liable for sexual abuse, who said he could grab women because when you're a star, they let you do that sort of thing, who appointed the 3 Supreme Court justices who overturned a woman's right to make choices about their own health care. That's how I heard it. And hearing that kind of thing might be clarifying for women in these final days. I certainly hope it is. Trump also said this week that RFK Jr., one of the country's leading vaccine conspiracy theorists, is, quote, going to work on health and women's health, adding, quote, he can do anything he wants. That prospect definitely focuses the mind, or it should. Oh, and he also fantasized out loud about watching one of his fiercest female critics, Liz Cheney, standing in front of a firing squad.
She's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. You know, when the guns are trained on her face.
I'd say that's awfully clarifying for anyone who doesn't want to live in a country where their leader, as Cheney herself put it, threatens those who speak against them with death. I mean, that's all how Donald Trump is closing out his campaign. Controlling women, letting conspiracy theorists run wild with the nation's health, fantasizing about the death of a female critic. I mean, that Iowa poll I showed you is shocking in some ways, but should a 20-point lead with women in any state be all that surprising? Is it really any great wonder why women are voting early at a faster pace than men? Why late deciders may be breaking Harris's way? Should we really be that surprised? Look, this race is going to be close. We don't know how it will end. I'm going to keep saying that. But at the close of this campaign, at least the American people are seeing the core of Donald Trump. They're seeing who he really is, what he really intends to do. And he is who you think he is. He will use power how he has told us for years he will use power. We're a few days out, and there is not a shred of ambiguity left. So am I concerned? Am I anxious that there aren't enough people in those battleground states who see this choice for what it is? Of course I am. But 2 days out from this election, I remain hopeful that there are. Starting us off today is Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. He's joining us from Michigan in his personal capacity. It's great to see you. I have to start with this brand new poll out of Iowa, a state you won in a Democratic caucus back in 2020. We all remember that. You also did some local media in Iowa last week, which sent the internet a spur. What do you make of that poll, knowing Iowa as you know it, knowing the electorate as you know it?
Well, yeah, I spent a lot of time in Iowa, and on one level, it's remarkable, and on another level, I could see it. Look, Iowa is full of people who think for themselves, folks who are not afraid to cross party lines, who usually vote this way but decide to vote that way based on the candidates. And, you know, it tracks with the fact that we've seen, as far as I can tell, an unprecedented number of Republicans out there saying, hey, this time you got to vote for the Democrats. So, look, it's only one poll. You don't want to get carried away. But if you do live and breathe this stuff, you know that this might be the most famous name in polling, certainly in Iowa, and somebody who's extremely rigorous. So I think what that tells us is not just what could happen in Iowa, but what is happening across the country. And I've got to tell you, and I say this in all humility because nobody really knows anything for sure until the election ends, but it is consistent with how it feels right now on the ground in Michigan. I'm right now at a field office in Ingham County, been crisscrossing the state for the last day and a half, and there's an extraordinary amount of energy. We just kicked off a canvass with dozens, probably about 100 volunteers getting ready to go out, knock on doors, and that momentum is palpable. It's real, and I hope if we all do our job and make sure we talk to every voter we can think of, both about how to vote and about whether to vote, I think this could propel a real victory on Tuesday.
Sometimes energy tells you a lot. A lot of times it tells you a lot, especially in the final days. And, you know, to your point, I mean, I don't think the Harris campaign is counting on Iowa. No one should think that. But Michigan is an example of this, certainly Wisconsin, Minnesota, states around there. There are some demographics where she has been working to make up ground. Obviously, she's got a huge lead among women, but Iowa's a big white rural state. It shows to me that she can do well, perhaps, among that demographic. What is your takeaway of that in terms of how it could play into other Midwestern states? And there's certainly swaths of Michigan that fall into those demographics as well.
Well, you know, Donald Trump broke almost every promise that he made, but he did manage to keep a couple. And one of them was that he promised to destroy a woman's right to choose. That was a promise that he made to the far religious right. And then he kept that promise and destroyed that right. Every American woman had a nationwide right to choose before he came to power, and now don't. And that's an enormously important thing that, look, I think not just women, but the men who care about women and about freedom in this country should be motivated by. So it's something that I think you do see reflected. If anything, I would guess it may be a little bit hard to capture in the polls, just how strong of a force that is. Women as a force really helped change things in 2022 when we had election results in the midterms that kind of went against the laws of political physics. Usually you don't see Democrats do that well when there's a Democratic president. But I think that had a lot to do with it. Right here in Michigan, I was proud in 2022 to vote for the ballot initiative to secure the right to choose for women here in this state. But that ought to be a national right. The whole point of a constitutional right is that it applies to everybody everywhere in the country. And I think about, I'm pretty sure my mom is watching us right now. And she and I want to make sure that my daughter has as many rights or more than my mom had. And we're all in this together to make sure that's a reality. And that starts with making sure Kamala Harris is the next president of the United States.
I think a lot of people are wondering, what can they do? How should they be talking in these final days? You've responded to some recent headlines about Trump, like about his rally at Madison Square Garden, by saying it's bait. In other words, it's a distraction, and we should focus on the positives of Harris and less on the negatives of Trump. That's always a tricky balance, not giving Trump oxygen while still holding him accountable. And I'm just wondering, as you're out there on the trail over the next couple of days, how are you balancing that? How do you hope people balance that who are out there speaking publicly and privately about the choice here?
Yeah, it is a tough balance because he does things that are so outrageous, so wrong, so dangerous that we have to respond. But I think the more we're talking about him, the less we're talking about you, the voter, the American family that has so much on the line. And I do think we need to be out there reminding folks that it's not about chasing the latest silly thing he did or disturbing thing that he did or said online. It's about making sure that we make it more affordable to live in this country, that we restore a woman's right to choose, that we grow our economy, and remind everybody why they personally will be better off with her in charge. There's one other message that I think is important, and it is something that is kind of evoked by all of the craziness and some of the ugliness of his campaign, which is I think there's a lot of people, left, right, and center in this country, who are just yearning for a more normal future, one with, frankly, has a more normal Republican Party. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for politics not to be punching you in the face every day, every time you turn on the news, because we can get back to a way of doing things in this country where, of course, we're not always going to agree, but it's not this constant in-your-face death match that it's felt like, whether he's president or whether he's candidate. And I got to tell you, if he leads the Republican Party to defeat the third time in a row, 2020, the 2022 midterms, and now, then it will finally, I think, lead us to a moment where the Republican Party finds some way to part ways with what him and everything he represents. And we can sometimes, just sometimes, like at Thanksgiving dinner, maybe leave politics on the back burner.